On May 15, 2024, at approximately 12:02 CDT, a Beech V35-TC Bonanza, registered as November the 47 Whiskey Tango, was involved in a catastrophic accident near Franklin, Tennessee. The crash resulted in the tragic loss of the private pilot and 2 passengers. The airplane was substantially damaged and disintegrated upon impact. Let's take a look. Operated as a Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 91 personal flight, the aircraft was on a planned journey originating from Louisiana Regional Airport in Gonzales, Louisiana. The flight commenced at 8:50 CDT and was bound for Bowman Field Airport in Louisville, Kentucky, where the pilot intended to pick up an additional passenger before returning to Louisiana Regional Airport. The total planned route covered approximately 550 nautical miles, making it a relatively long personal flight. The aircraft was piloted by Dr. Lucius Doucette, a resident of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, who tragically had 2 of his children on board during the crash. Dr. Doucette had acquired the aircraft in December 20, 2023, and had accumulated 366 flight hours in total, with 14 of those hours spent flying the ill-fated plane. While relatively experienced, the pilot's limited familiarity with the Beech V35-TC may have posed challenges during demanding flight conditions. The Bonanza's operational limits include a never-exceed speed of 195 knots and a maximum maneuvering speed of 132 knots. These performance specifications are critical, particularly in turbulent or adverse weather conditions. After departing Louisiana Regional Airport, the Beech V35-TC Bonanza began its climb, reaching an altitude of 9,000 feet mean sea level approximately 15 minutes into the flight. The initial climb appears stable as the aircraft maintained its cruising altitude and followed the planned route. However, as the airplane approached the Mississippi border, the pilot descended to 7,000 feet mean sea level, where the aircraft remained for the majority of the flight until nearing the airspace of Nashville International Airport. The pilot was in communication with Memphis Air Route Traffic Control Center before entering Nashville International Airport's approach sector. Coordination between the Memphis and Nashville controllers ensured continuity in the management of the flight as it approached the Nashville area. At this stage, the flight plan appeared to be progressing normally despite the reported deviations and subsequent challenges. While en route, the pilot requested a deviation from the original route and a higher altitude. The reasons for these requests were not specified in the communications, but they were approved by air traffic controllers.
4 Whiskey Tango, can you go back on course to Oscar Whiskey, Echo Whiskey Oscar? You were deviating left and right, so I need you on a heading, but if you go direct to if I release you to Echo Whiskey Oscar, can you go direct? Maintain 9 or 1,000. Whiskey Tango, did you want to climb to 9,000? I'm showing you 9,500, national number is 2976.
Descending to 9,000, 47 Whiskey Tango.
47 Whiskey Tango, I'm showing you at 9,400.
Descending to 9,000, 47 Whiskey Tango.
The pilot was cleared to climb to 9,500 feet mean sea level, but was later instructed to descend back to 9,000 feet mean sea level, possibly as part of maintaining traffic separation or navigating the Nashville airspace. The pilot acknowledged these instructions, but this marked the last recorded transmission before the situation deteriorated. As the flight continued, the aircraft encountered an area of moderate to heavy precipitation while established on a 360-degree track. This challenging weather likely introduced turbulence and reduced visibility, increasing the complexity of the flight environment. During this phase, the aircraft momentarily descended to 8,900 feet mean sea level, which may have been an unintentional altitude deviation or an effort by the pilot to manage the adverse conditions. Subsequently, the airplane executed a right turn that transitioned into a steep right descending turn. The flight path data indicated increasing instability, with the ground speed rising from 180 knots to 214 knots, significantly exceeding the aircraft's maximum maneuvering speed and approaching the never-exceed speed. The descent rate became alarming, starting at 4,000 feet per minute and escalating to 15,000 feet per minute in its final moments. The final moments of the flight were marked by a rapid escalation in instability. ADS-B data revealed a dramatic drop in the aircraft's ground speed to 43 knots, coinciding with a peak descent rate of 15,000 feet per minute. These figures reflect the catastrophic loss of control that occurred during the flight's final descent. The last communication from the pilot was a routine acknowledgement of an updated altimeter setting, indicating no apparent distress or abnormality at that point. Shortly after this transmission, radar contact with the aircraft was lost.
47 Whiskey Tango, I'm showing you going southbound. Or 47 Whiskey Tango, Nashville approach. 47 Whiskey Tango, radar contact lost.
This is likely a case of spatial disorientation, a condition where the pilot loses a sense of the aircraft's orientation in space, especially under instrument meteorological conditions, IMC. This loss of orientation can lead to improper control inputs and is particularly hazardous in aircraft like the Bonanza, which are known for being slippery or sensitive to control loss. In this situation, the aircraft entered a descending right-hand turn, which is a classic scenario for spatial disorientation. In such conditions, the pilot may have failed to recognize the aircraft's rapid descent and loss of control, ultimately leading to a fatal situation. Bonanzas, like many other aircraft, are highly susceptible to losing control in IMC. These conditions often involve poor visibility and cloud cover, making it difficult for the pilot to rely on visual cues. As the aircraft descends uncontrollably, the airspeed quickly exceeds safe limits, often surpassing the aircraft's never exceed speed and maximum structural cruising speed. This rapid increase in airspeed places enormous stress on the aircraft's structure, pushing it beyond the limits it was designed to withstand. If control is not quickly regained, the aircraft can suffer from structural failure, as evidenced by the accident's outcome. In such a situation, it's crucial for the pilot to take prompt action to regain control. One key measure to avoid flying into hazardous conditions is for pilots to communicate with ATC and request deviations from their flight path. Pilots can request changes in altitude or course to navigate around adverse weather such as thunderstorms or turbulence. This flexibility allows pilots to avoid dangerous conditions while ensuring they stay within safe operating limits. However, it appears that in this instance, the pilot did not coordinate with ATC to request any deviation, which could have helped avoid the dangerous situation. Clear communication with ATC is essential, particularly when weather conditions are deteriorating. Pilots should inform ATC about their intentions, whether they need to change their altitude to clear weather or make a course deviation to avoid storms. This allows ATC to provide timely guidance and assistance, ensuring the pilot is supported in avoiding hazard. The failure to request a deviation or communicate about the changing conditions likely contributed to the loss of control, as ATC was not made aware of the pilot's struggle with weather or the flight path deviations that might have been needed. Witnesses on the ground described hearing a loud pop as the aircraft descended rapidly. This sound was likely indicative of structural failure in flight. Some witnesses reported seeing pieces of the airplane falling through the overcast cloud layer, further confirming an in-flight breakup before the wreckage impacted the ground and water. According to the NTSB preliminary report, the wreckage was dispersed across a half-mile radius in a fan-shaped pattern, consistent with in-flight structural separation. The initial debris discovered along the wreckage path included the separated elevator rudders, or rudder vaders, suggesting that the tail control surfaces detached early during the breakup. Further along the path, fragments of the fuselage and the detached wings were recovered, while the engine and propeller assembly were the last major components found. These were submerged in a lake at the end of the wreckage trail in approximately 8 feet of water. Despite the extensive scattering of parts, about 90% of the aircraft was ultimately recovered for examination. The structural damage to the aircraft was consistent with an in-flight breakup caused by excessive aerodynamic stress. Both wings separated from the fuselage due to downward or negative bending overload, a condition that occurs when the aerodynamic forces exceed the design limits of the structure. The left wing was largely intact, and fuel was observed leaking from the main fuel tank near the wing root. However, its tip tank remained intact but contained no fuel. The right wing also separated, with its tip tank having detached and split open. The propeller blades reflected evidence of severe impact forces. 2 blades exhibited chordwise gouges and were missing approximately 3 inches of their tips, while another blade was bent forward at its midspan. The engine sustained extensive damage, with a 12-inch by 3-inch hole visible in the engine case. Additional damage to cylinders and accessory components underscored the violent nature of the impact. The tail section, including the stabilator and rudder vaders, showed clear signs of downward deformation, pointing strongly towards structural overload as the root cause. The rudder vader skins appeared splayed, with fractures that featured slanted edges, a classic indication of overstress failure. The V-tail design of the Beech Bonanza, introduced in 1947, was a groundbreaking innovation with its sleek butterfly configuration, replacing the conventional three-surface tail. However, this unique structure faced challenges over the years, prompting the issuance of airworthiness directives to strengthen its integrity. These updates included reinforcing the leading edge of the horizontal tail to address earlier instances of structural failures. A distinctive feature of this design is its magnesium rudder vaders, prized for their lightweight properties but known to be delicate. Proper balance is critical for these components, especially following maintenance or repainting, as imbalance can compromise performance and safety. In later models, Beechcraft addressed some of these issues by transitioning to all aluminum rudder vaders, which offered greater durability. Following the accident, one of the pressing questions was whether the tail failed first, causing the wings to fold, or if the sequence was reversed. This determination is now in the hands of investigators. What is evident, however, is that the aircraft experienced an in-flight structural failure, likely triggered by operations exceeding its design limits.